Hi, I'm Christine Benz from Morningstar.com. Roughly 1,100 mutual funds currently earn Analyst ratings, and our Analyst team is constantly reviewing their ratings on the various funds they cover. Joining me to discuss 2 recent upgrades and 2 recent downgrades is Russ Kinnell. He's Director of Fund Research for Morningstar. Russ, thank you so much for being here.
Good to be here.
So, Russ, let's take it from the top and start with the bad news. A couple of notable funds that we liked more in the past, we've recently downgraded. Let's start with RDO International. They've got 2 funds, RDO International Equity as well as International Equity 2. We used to like them a lot. Now we've got them down to neutral.
That's right. The issue there is that Aberdeen is buying RDO, and they said the managers are not going to stay with the funds, most likely after the deal goes through. So it's definitely a big changes are coming. We don't know exactly what's going on, but it's enough to take us to neutral because you now say the managers are probably leaving, and we don't know who's replacing them.
Okay, so the managers are going to leave as part of the deal?
That's what they said, is that they expect they will leave. They didn't say definitively, but it's enough for us to take them to neutral.
Okay, so typically when you see a manager change, is that necessarily cause for a downgrade, or is it kind of a case-by-case?
It's cause for review, but it's definitely case by case. You really want to understand who's left, how central are they to the process, and so you really want to look at it on a case by case basis, but you really want to take a close look whenever that's happening.
So if I'm an owner of this fund, is this a cause to consider selling? How should I review this downgrade or see it in the context of what portfolio maneuvers I should make?
Yeah, I think you might want to consider selling. You could hold and see who comes on, or if you know there's another good fund out there, you might want to just switch, because at a minimum, it seems this fund is likely to get new managers and probably a new strategy. Now, it's possible they'll be decent, so if you want to be patient, you can, or you can simply say, let's look for a new replacement and get one of the best funds out there.
Okay. Another fund with some manager issues recently, T. Rowe Price Health Sciences, a fund we liked a lot in the past, and a fund that certainly had very good performance under manager Chris Jenner. Some uncertainty there, and that in turn has prompted a downgrade.
Yeah, we don't often go all the way from gold to neutral, but we did in this case because Chris Jenner is taking 2 analysts with him and leaving the firm, and he really had a great record at the fund, and now you've got one of the analysts promoted to take his spot, but that leaves some gaps in coverage at the fund, so really a big change for the fund. We don't often go from gold to neutral, but it seems warranted here.
So again, if I own this fund, should I sell it? What would you say my decision making should be?
Yeah, I would certainly consider that. Look at our healthcare funds. Also look at your tax situation. Jenner had a really nice return there, so you might have a big taxable gain if you sell too. So think about that as well. But it's definitely a big change, and really a big drop in coverage and management quality there. So I would take a long, hard look at it.
I guess the question is, if a fund has a change this significant and you think it's really a blow that Jenner is leaving, why not move it even further down? Why do we hold it at neutral?
Well, because now we're in the unknown. We don't view it as negative. Negative would mean we think it's probable that it will have a poor risk-adjusted performance in the future. We don't go that far, but we do think, well, you're kind of back to neutral. You have someone who doesn't have a track record. You have some gaps in coverage. Historically, the fund has done well, so that's a positive. But neutral often means simply that there's a lot of unknowns, and that's the case here.
And I would think T. Rowe Price's general record on stewardship, as well as relatively low costs, would be saving graces here as well.
Yeah. T. Rowe across the board has strong performance at their fund, so that's really a positive. It tells you the analysts are probably pretty good still on the fund, but there are some gaps, and even at T. Rowe, the managers are still really important.
Now, Russ, let's move over to the good news. Artisan Small Cap is a fund that we previously had rated bronze. It has moved up to silver. What prompted the change there?
Well, it's interesting what Artisan did when 2 longtime managers of the fund retired in 08 and 09. Craig Sepukanis, who was a co-manager there, has stayed in place. And what they did was they moved Craig Sepukanis to Andy Stevens' team, who you know from Artisan Midcap. And what we found over time is it seems like that team is really meshing. He's working well with that team. So it actually has worked out to be an upgrade. We took a while. It happened in 09. But we've liked the way the team has worked. We've liked the way Sepukanis has picked stocks so far. And Stevens' team is a really strong, cohesive team, and things seem really to be clicking there.
Okay. Another fund that has recently seen an upgrade is Good Haven Fund. First, let's do a little bit of stage setting on this fund because it may not be a familiar name to some of our viewers. Let's talk about the fund's past history and the pedigree of these particular managers.
Sure. Larry Pitkowski and Keith Trauner were formerly co-managers at Fairhome Fund. And they set out about 3 years ago to launch Good Haven. They left Fairhome, and they have the backing of Markel, a well-known insurance company, an investor, and they've really set about building the shop the right way. But we took our time. We wanted to get to know their process and the firm and see if what they said is how they actually executed. And so we're to the point now where we feel pretty good about that, so we raised the fund to bronze. They run a focused, value-oriented strategy, a lot like you'd see at Fairhome, though they de-emphasize financials, which of course is what got Fairhome in trouble. Now, one of the tricky parts here is that we know that these managers contributed to Fairhome's success, but obviously Bruce Berkowitz is the lead dog there and deserves most of the credit. So we can't give them all the credit and simply say they're going to replicate what Fairhome did, but we can see that they're doing a good job so far, that they are executing the strategy the way we expect. It's still a bold, focused strategy, so that's not to suggest that it's going to be a lower risk version of Fairhome, but it's a really intriguing fund.
So how do you evaluate a situation like this where you've got some managers who are not just trying to run their new fund, but they're also simultaneously setting up a firm? How do you try to assess whether the managers can successfully pull off that balance? Yeah,
well, you really have to get to know everyone else at the firm, the analysts, other people handling the management side. You have to look at their own management skills. You have to look at who they brought in to help them out. And so it's a little more involved than, say, your typical, we mentioned T. Rowe, and obviously there we're going to have to reinvent the wheel and investigate the firm all over again for one individual fund. We know that they've got a lot of good things in place, but there's a little more involved in a case like this, especially with a new operation. But we felt really good as over time we had a lot of discussions with them.
Russ, one thing that often concerns investors as they look at brand new funds is that their expenses can be a little high. How does Good Haven measure up from that standpoint?
It's okay. It's 1.1%, which is a little pricey for a large cap fund, but for a fairly new fund, it's not bad. So we rate price neutral, and so price is okay. Hopefully assets will grow and that'll come down a little, but it's not great. And if you know Fairhome Fund, that's long been around 1%, so it's kind of, I think, priced in a similar fashion.
One other issue is Fairhome arguably got a little bit large. The asset inflows were coming in a very strong fashion for a period of time. Have these managers of Good Haven signaled that they will close at a certain level? Yeah,
they've said that they're much more aware of asset size and I think are going to be more inclined to close early. Obviously, they haven't given an exact number, and we'll have to see how that goes. But yeah, they've certainly indicated a greater sensitivity to that.
Okay, Russ, thank you so much for being here and sharing this wrap-up of recent upgrades and downgrades.
You're welcome.
Thanks for watching. I'm Christine Benz for Morningstar.com.